events. Now we are about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of USAID, Transparency and Accountability in Public Administration Services, I would like to greet you at this event, and I'm very grateful to you for finding the opportunity to join us on the call and come offline. So for the first time, we present a gender component in open data of Ukraine as a survey. I'm Nadia Konashchuk. I am manager of open data area of TAPAS project to USAID. And I moderate this event. As you can see, this is arranged in such a way that we have several parts to it. And the first part will have greetings from our esteemed guests and also a presentation on effective implementation of policies based on open data. The second part, the latter part, has to do with presentation of the results of the service, and the third part is a panel discussion to share the real-life case studies on implementation of gender component implementation in open data in Ukraine. Before we switch to the principal part of our presentation, I would like to thank the Defense Forces of Ukraine for the opportunity to have this meeting today, for their opportunity to discuss the vision and any kind of developmental plan for Ukraine. So I would like us all to stand up and dedicate a moment of silence to loving memory of Ukrainians who perished in this fight for Ukraine. Thank you to Ukraine. And despite the fact that Ukraine and its defenders opposed the aggression effectively, we have to make many steps along the pro-European track of ours. And this survey is very topical in terms of being a piece of evidence that the war influences women and men differently. Disproportionate gender inequity is getting stronger. And this survey is extremely important on this very point, and I'm very grateful to all of us joining this survey and the Ministry of Digital Transformation. Ministry, you always initiate societal projects very important for the nation. The government of the US and the UK, the governments who made it possible to implement the projects, and the Council of Europe for 7 years being our faithful implementation partner. So now I would like to turn the floor to Manager of Digital Transformation, the Minister of Digital Transformation, Mstislav Bannik. Good morning. Before I start, I would like to ask you about the weather and whether you like it. And this is just to say that it is not the Odessa situation. I've seen the video, I believe, but we have made it, all of us who had the will to do so. So now we have to switch to the principal talking points. It's not a secret of any kind that open data is a priority for the ministry. And we continuously place emphasis with it and with the team on the part of the ministry and our partners. We have a great track with the Ministry of Justice also to arrange the data and the artifacts that they discard and prevent us from opening it. And it is a priority, open data. That is, last year we had the second position, open data maturity rating. And this year we expect a new rating. And this is a continuous competition which never ends. But let's see what will be our position this year and draw some conclusions about further developments in this partnership for the first position to be conquered and held. Despite the full-scale invasion, we continue working in this sphere, and in addition to that, we have another track in parallel with that is continuous on the one hand. On the other hand, during the full-scale invasion, it harmonized our open data area with the requirements of the EU. You all know that, but I cannot but mention that there is a host of areas, and as a regular citizen, you think that accession to the EU is about signing documents, shaking hands, and removing the crossing points and the customs from the border. But this is a lot of work to arrange and synchronize all the areas and systems of the state. The open data area is not an exception of any kind, and accordingly we have this track with our team, which a regular citizen wouldn't take notice or heed of. But this also includes our accession to the EU in organized and proper fashion. Now that gender issue and gender ratio in open data, here I would like to say the key thing, it's not what you expect, I think, but the thing that I would like to outline here. What is important now? This rating is done, that's number one, and we have to understand and appreciate that before we discuss some equity, inequity, equality, and inequality, we have to take care of the figures. And because before we calculate some open data, some business-related data, research-related data, and these are just guesses, these are just assumptions and bubbles of the people, silence of the people who are not in communication. It is not representative at all. Myself and my wife in our life, we've never encountered any gender inequity or racism. I've just seen the US movies, but gender issue should be digitalized properly to take care of that and make decisions. After that, we can do whatever we choose to. So I've visited many countries. In my position in Africa, gender equity is legislated for, and the parliament, men and women are 50-50. So, these things were embedded a long time ago, many years ago. Now they're trying to draw conclusions because forceful equalization sometimes leads to loss in quality, deterioration of quality. Summarizing, I can say that the data for today and for you to work with can open up some hidden information, present it or display it for public discussion together with you, with the public, general public and the donors, the government. We can manage that and plan for the new projects, new products, perhaps some new specific acceleration programs to support equalization and striking the golden balance, so to speak. I'm very thankful to the donors, and thank you. Thank you, Mstislav, for your inspirational speech and vision on the open data or data. I'm sure that it will all be fully open soon. Now, Eastern Europe Foundation is our implementing partner of TAPAS, and there are many activities that would not have been implemented hadn't it been for the project. Natalia Slimko, Eastern Europe Foundation. Thank you, dear participant, program director of the foundation, Natalia Slimko is the name. I'm very thankful to you for the opportunity to address this kind of audience and say a couple of words about the gender aspect. I'm sure that we are going to discuss with the academics, with the researchers who did that survey, and a lot of interest information helping us to put the right emphasis and focus on the issue, to see gender differences, gender aspects clearly, and take that into account in policy making and policy change, to include all the aspects, inclusivity and cohesion in the society to the extent that presents the right balance with the gender equity approach. We are an NGO or an implementing partner of Eurasia Foundation, and for our organization we look into open data experience in much detail and help with implementation of many other programs. And we have a whole portfolio, and this provides the opportunity to launch this dialogue in the society, increase the number of contributing organizations who try their hand in developing and programming for the model of public dialogue based on open data and social and societal processes and their reflections in the field. And we pay a lot of attention to that. I think that this discussion will open understanding of our next step together, not just forward and to expand the knowledge and to deepen the understanding of open data and the depth for the inclusivity approach to be introduced into this society. And despite this severe weather, we have a cozy place to discuss this issue in, and we'll come out of this situation very much enriched, I believe, and this survey will serve as a basis for future dialogue and academic discussion in our community. Thank you very much. Thank you, Natalia. And now I would like to remind you that this event is a hybrid one, off and online. So the viewers on the call also can put their questions to the speakers at this event, and you can leave your comments with broadcasting and streaming vehicles which have functionalities for that, as you know. And now I would like to summarize all the speeches so far. Gender approach is a must-have in all these spheres and all the walks of life. And open data can help a lot. So because effective decision-making is only possible with the open data in place or available. A person is entitled to an opinion, but the opinion is just a subjective view unless it is supported with open data. Yanina Lyubova, expert from the group Open Data from the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine. She'll discuss open data as an instrument of effective policy making. And, dear colleagues, I would like to greet you all. Despite the weather conditions, we have made it, and let's discuss the matter in hand. Let me refocus our discussion a little bit. It's not just the gender component as it is presented by the social media. We're discussing open data and gender component. So let's first decide what open data means as a notion. So here is a question. What is this open data? In your opinion? Unfortunately, we cannot hear the answers because there's no input as far as simultaneous interpretation is concerned. We'll have to. There are many powerful minds, experts attending this workshop, so we would like to have some contributions. It's still too early for productive thinking, perhaps. So let's have the outline of open data as a notion. International, this is any kind of information in the machine-readable formats for further free utilization. Every jurisdiction adjusts this to their specific situations. In Ukraine, in the legislation, there is no open data notion. There is public information in the form of open data. That means that we narrow it down to specific holders of the information that are requested to promulgate open data. There is 10.1, the law of Ukraine on access to public information, that reads the public information in the form of open data is public information in the format that provides for automated processing with electronic means, free and free of charge access and further use. So let's discuss this. Public information is information generated, collected by the state, documented by the state, by the government, and used in their work. So holders of information are the government and also holders of national important information, like governmental organizations. The level of radioactive contamination of air around Zaporizhzhia and PP, such an organization is a holder by definition, and they entitled and requested to provide public information. What makes public information different from open data? Open data is readable for machines and can be processed automatically with electronic means. This is not PDF. This is not about information that is being held and used at the official website. This is CSV, JSON, XML, that can be fed into the machine and processed there with some output provided. So we have to go down this chain of utility. We have the machine-readable format, and we can get services and products based on open data. And we've heard about U-Control, I'm sure, open data board, SafeBucket board. In every single sphere, everything surrounding us is services based on open data.
That is why we very proactively, as a Ministry of Digitalization, cooperate with those who provide information. That is, we explain that they should submit information in proper formats that the users would be able to take a historical series of data and then process it. That is, data is not something which is printed out on as a hard copy, but this is something which could be used several times. And another important aspect about this about open data. This information should be free of charge and identification of the user should not be used. That is, ID, mobile ID, bank ID should not be used. That is, open data is information which is generated by the state in computer-readable formats, which could be further used by journalists, academic community, NGOs, etc. Open data had been started its formation since 2009 in the United States of America, and this wave had reached Ukraine approximately in the year 2015, when, after the Revolution of Dignity, a big societal demand to control the flows of corruption among people in power became quite big. In Ukraine, unlike in the United States, it developed as a tool to counteract corruption, and then in Mexico in 2017 the International Charter of Open Data was passed. But this is not a binding document. This is just a compilation or summary of practices, principles which should be applied by the states. The first principle is accessibility of data. That is, if the state wants to limit any access to information, then the state has to provide good reasons for that. Actually, society has the right to have as broad access to information as possible. The second possible is the principle that the information should be updated on timely basis. That is, the state should ensure that public information is not left unattended, so to say, but is supervised and upgraded and updated. And this updating should happen in a non-aggregated format, which actually means that the information should be registered by the state, not as a bulk piece of information, but in a disaggregated manner. That is specifically for each item. The next principle reflected in that declaration is interoperability, which means that the data should be available for compatibility. In reality, in every state, we have hundreds of different registers and databases. And for example, we have USAID tax code, and this allows to utilize this in unified way as identifier when we look for specific data about some specific entity. Having put in the United States Register of Companies, there's specific code of any entity, we can find all the available data about this object. This actually means that the state implements this principle about interoperability. The fourth principle suggests that the data should be available in the machine-readable formats. That is, when you when you create some piece of information in the Excel format, which is private property of Microsoft company and not accessible to everybody. That is, you have to create data in a format which could be opened from Microsoft, from Apple, from Linux software. The principle of continuous application, which means that we publish data not just for publication itself, but for proper use of this data. There are examples when the databases are used by the government itself. For example, during pandemic, the big data were widely used by the Ministry of Health. And later, they started to create dashboards based on the big data. That is, they made available maps reflecting the level of infection and or, for example, the maps which reflected implementation of the healthcare reform. And with that useful information, people were able to make well-informed decisions. Unfortunately, under martial law, some registers were closed, and now access to them is limited. But we hope that soon we will get access to at least some of them, like the register of private properties, etc. For example, the register of private property is very used for those who try to control and curb corruption in the country. And the last but not least principle is the principle of sustainable development, which means that all the states should stimulate the use and development of big data. And as of now, we have more than 100 available services which stimulate collection of this big data. This is environment, healthcare, forestries, some other types of economic activity, etc. Big data are all around us, and sometimes we do not reflect about that fact. This allows us to stimulate the state on our side, because actually big data they make our lives simpler. Easy Way, for example, is quite useful database which allows you to track movement and schedules of public transport and catch bus or trolleybus which you need. And this is actually an example of our reverse impact or mutual impact on the state and municipalities. But if we compare the level of our database, big database development with the European, we can find out that we have still much to do in this area. And I hope that we will be able to inspire you today, and specifically in the area of gender component, and encourage you to make more pressure on state in terms of gender disaggregation of data. So summing up, big data does not require any special request for information from you. Big data are available round the clock, and you can easily get access to it. Then big data portal is quite convenient. It is open for everybody, and you have no need to request about specific information and then try to decode the bureaucratic language of the institution when it provides you with the answer. You may interpret your big data yourself. Then big data have formats, use the formats as CSV, SPV, etc. Then database, they contain convenient search engines for you. That is, your entry line is rather short, and you can find information in any state register like USR. You get just small piece of information. When you have access to big database, you get a much broader piece of information. As the Ministry of Digital Transformation, we are now thinking how to open this broad access to big databases. Then data in big databases could be comparable. Also, this data could be used in internet shops, e-shops. The only requirement is for them is to indicate the source of data, not to breach the effective legislation. What are the advantages of open data for broad public? It improves communication between a broad public, the authorities and businesses. For example, we have CityBot Nazar, which was created in Mariupol around 2018. Later, it spread around Ukraine, and now it is active in up to 9 cities in Ukraine. The role of this bot is information provided about incidents and emergency situations in municipal services and utility lines. That is, it answers to the questions when hot water would be repaired, and this makes the life of local utility services easier. They can cope with bigger numbers of requests and claims from the citizens. Another good example is Prozora database, and this is about anti-corruption and a rather powerful tool against it. The third example is database about repairs of roads and highways, and you individually, you personally can report about poor condition of any pathway, any road, and then track how it is being repaired. Something happened, some technical issues. So the objective of open data is not to catch those who work in improper way, but to draw attention to the fact that something is improper is happening. The service EcoBot provides information about environmental impact assessments and you can track data in that database, and you might recollect how Minister Fedorov traveled to Germany and transported servers and database about permits to construction. So now coming back to environmental database, you may go there and check the environmental impact assessments and reveal whether any violations of rules were done in course of this environmental impact assessment preparation. And later you may report about any negative consequences of improper assessment. The next useful set of services are developed in the area of construction, like building data, mapper of innovations. The latter is about registered historical buildings, period buildings, which are registered as monuments, and you may find out whether they are eligible for construction or even demolition or not. If any developer wants to make new development, new construction, you may check whether the surrounding area, whether the neighborhood is available for new construction. You may request for association documents of the developers, etc.
Creation of new products, services, and business models. I think, well, by show of hands, who have ever used Finance UN, Strafe UA? You have, great. This is another service based on open data. When we add the monetary element or pecuniary element to it, we create new kind of data. You can turn open data into some kind of revenue, some kind of income. And this is a great example of how can we can effectively use this, because Strafe UA is top 3 downloads at App Store. A great example in my book, models of relations between business and public. Prozora, this venue where the government presents their requirements and the business community provides. This is openness for business and general public, and we have to understand when we communicate, openness and transparency are also important KPIs, the number of engaged investments. So open data can do that, provide for the two features in question. Well, back in 2019, 2020, Ivano-Frankivsk appellate court abandoned any paperwork for correspondence with arms of litigation and suggested the use of services based on open data in order to switch to paperless and abandon paperwork. And monitoring policies, we discussed that in APC and the creation of dashboards based on the data with the dashboards and we created 9 dashboards with demonstration of how well the funds could be utilized for educational purposes, funding of education, to bridge the gaps, to increase and decrease, equalize and align. Now about gender component. Stislav was right suggesting that it all starts with the figures, and before we switch to any decision making, we have to prepare the basis with figures, with data, because data is raw material for decision making, and hence, moreover, we have to switch to open data, because when we discuss some information, references, extracts, people can do that, but this is in effect with open data. We can see that it is possible to automate the analysis process. This is about culture of processing, managing data. The more we can process in an automated mode, the more effective is the decision-making process, and for that we have to provide not just information but also machine-readable data, open data, in order to provide for adequate decision-making on gender issues. We need the data. We have representatives of Ministry Social Policy, Youth and Sports, and they will share their experience, and I think they will emphasize and strengthen the point, because without raw material data in the 21st century, it is impossible to make any gender-based decisions. And this is the general outline of open data and how the government used them for decision-making and policy-making. Well, let me thank you for listening to my very intense and very fast presentation. And Yanina, stay here and using this opportunity, have plenty of time to answer the questions coming from our viewers. I'm actually in love with your presentations, and I keep coming back to this information, fishing out the new pearls. But many stakeholders are interested in update of the legislation for open data, namely 835, the well-known resolution. Can you update us on the latest developments? The general framework in the legislation, we have 3 principal pieces that serve as pillars for the open data realm. The law of Ukraine on access to public information, Article 10.1 specifically, and this is the bonus to the issue which was that's renewed the process of making changes to the law of Ukraine, said law of Ukraine, and said article, the open data section, and many other developments. This is a bonus from me. And 835, the resolution of the Cabinet Minister, Bible open data, they call them in the Cabinet everything about open data and more, everything that has to be done to where to go. And the third is 867 open data portal, data.gov.ua and WA, and we have to update all that. Now we are in preparation of the another version of the said resolution with certain impact of the martial law. It is not about footnotes for reservations. Let me repeat what I said recently at one of the activities on Ministry for Digital Transformation, we are champions of transparency and openness. But there are some points where we have to respond to the martial law, and it required some time to prepare the draft in question. Now it's being finalized by the ministry. It is being done by the first deputy minister and the first OK, and also reconciliation with accommodation with the Association of Citizen Towns, all the stakeholders, in short. I hope that that by the end of the year it will be supplied to the Secretariat of the Cabinet of Ministers, and I hope it will be in quality and well enough. We have to reconcile this with the Ministry of Digital Transformation, then the stakeholders. Thank you, Yanina, for your very fast and intensive answer. I don't know what is more expected, USR or the updated resolution. We have the split in opinions. Thank you very much for being so agile in your presentation. And I would not trespassing any time unduly. Now the core of this event presentation, the results of this survey, and I would like to invite to take the floor the author, expert in gender equity and non-discrimination reforms, Natalia Черемошенцева. I'm a champion of open data after having worked with this topic. Before that, I knew very little about open data. Nadia enlightened me repeatedly, coming back to this terra incognita that I, or a blank area that I had in my appreciation. So when we started talking about it and thinking about it, doing this survey, at last it all merged, it all clicked. And now we have excellent opportunities, not just for advocacy, but for development as well. Janina did mention that this is raw material for decision making. Decisions are made not just for the sake of making, we'd like to believe, but for people, specific women, to become better. And without gender-based approach, we cannot do, because gender-based approach is focused on actually evaluating how different programs, strategies, and programs influence different groups of women. And we have two groups actually outlined, men and women, and they also include some diversity, but that cannot influence them in the same way. Nadia said that the war affects different groups differently. And the principle is that transparency and accountability and gender approach merges the two. As a result, what we get, or we should get, or we shall get, two different policies, and for equal distribution of resources in the first place. They're always scarce, and equity, justice, well, the demand is very powerful in this society. This is another good reason to continue along those lines. And the objective in mind here is to analyze the open data set and their gender sensitivity, not just analyze, but also distribute and designate data based on sex or gender. There can be age, cohort, place of residence, some statuses, and to develop recommendations for amending specific pieces of legislation and primary and secondary, for promulgation, subsequent promulgation. What kind of mission we had in mind? That was to discover whether there was any collection and distribution information based on gender distribution and other gender-related criteria, and whether any gender-related problems were reflected. We are looking into the data, how to understand what kind of gap and what kind of discrimination we can discover there. Well, this is not always easy, as we discovered, but it looks like we just break it down, have a special section for men and the other for women. Sometimes it is not enough, and we cannot see the gender-related gaps. But without this basic information, also we cannot proceed. So this is the first step. Whether this reflects the diversity of men and women. Let me repeat: what is access for men and women with disabilities residing in rural areas, whether they have equal access versus the urban population or populace. We wanted to see what kind of diversity we could represent there. And the accessibility of processing of data, Yanina was 80 sets of open data, and we had interviews with representatives of public administrative bodies, and also had a poll among experts who regularly produce such data, whether they use open data, not the statistical information, not about requests for access to public information, but opening a portal to use the open data. I was surprised to discover myself that nobody used them. And this is a great development developmental prospects, a lot of room for development. We wanted to use them and to look into the legislation as a serious open data and gender policy directive, so the EU regulation for open data, and we analyzed the portal because we had to work with the data posted on the portal, data.gov.ua, European sets of data, and the open data portal of the UK. We analyzed all the publications available at the point at the official sites of the governmental bodies. The analytical materials was subjected to validation with the answers provided to questions submitted in writing and by correspondence. We had online meetings to complement that. Even inside the ministries, we had to form some joint vision and approach to open data and gender-based approach. And that was not just the process of validation. And this part of work demonstrated that the central agencies are ready to a considerable extent. So the quality was translated, the quantity was translated into quality, and this is the right time, and there are lots of opportunities. Now about the structure of this survey. You can look into analysis of international standards, and we actually explored our legislation as to how this designated data had to be broken down and presented in the mod form in relation with our gender equity obligations and our commitments, how to collect, how to publish data, how to break them down. And that is good, quite good in our opinion, in our expert opinion. And the legislation provides for that, and it serves a good platform for a dialogue, inception or continuation of that dialogue. The European experience we can also read through the surveys for highlighting the data, the results of gender-related analysis, the directory of scales, and for representatives of the holders, how they use that and how they implement that, and technical recommendations to incorporate the categories in the set of data, the recommendations and specialized data. Every holder of the data, according to the registered set of data, have their own recommendations and arguments as to why the change has to be made for a specific registered set of data and based on what. It's not because we wanted it, but because there was, and it is very important, and what is the basis making it necessary to do that, and the legal framework is very important. It is described what it has to be described there to make changes to the set of data. Well, basically, and to open this topic, to open it more, to continue discussions from the point of view of the why we need the open data sets. And the positions, let me give you some examples and try to convince still unconverted. This is high quality analysis or gap analysis, and taking into account the data situation when we have here for the martial law situation. Open data is our rescue here, is our way out, because the situation is continuously changing rapidly sometimes. And essentially, philosophically, the open data is a much more flexible agent or instrument to evaluate the situation. For example, if we take such topic as capacity building for economic opportunities in men and women, especially at the time of crisis. And it is very important to know the number of clients who open their accounts with the banks to see whether we have any barriers in access to this financial service.
This is very important financial service, and we cannot find out this information now. While for us it is important to know gender of those who open accounts, because we assume that for women it might be more difficult to open account as for a man, and but this is just our suggestion. We cannot reveal the tendencies, the trends in this area, and without those data, we cannot develop any policy in relation to business development, or business support development, because we cannot imagine a customer for this policy. While in case of having proper gender-sensitive information about the opening of bank accounts, it would be possible for us. Also, gender-sensitive information would allow us to see any gender-related disbalances. For example, today we mentioned access to education. We would like to check whether girls and boys have equal access to education, including the differences between urban and rural areas. We would like also to check the trends in this area, whether this depends on specific locations and where people live. And also we would like to check the impact of disability on access to education. This again demonstrates that thinking about proper allocation of resources, which are always limited, we need to have gender-sensitive data. Also, another big aspect is anti-corruption. We would like to know the gender of those people who committed corruption crimes, because some research suggests that the more women you have in decision-making bodies, the less is the level of corruption. But we lack this data. Then when we are thinking about increasing efficiency of decision-making, data which are available for us as of today suggest that males are more subject to the tuberculosis disease, and the biggest part of patients in this category are between 35 and between 35 and 45 years of age, while the age group of males between 25 and 34 is a group where tuberculosis is not diagnosed, and we need to understand this fact to allocate more resources for revealing such patients. Then discussing efficient allocation of resources, it satisfies a huge request, huge demand for justice, for social justice or social equity. For example, if I'm a woman in a rural area, I'm a disabled woman, or I have small children, and I would like to see any state services which are delivered to me to make my situation, actually equal to other members of society who are in better life circumstances. Another important components where gender-sensitive data could be used are monitoring and evaluation. As of today, human resource is the most important resource and most important aspect for the state policies. We cannot just ignore any human resource that is available in the country. That's why the level of representation of different gender in decision-making bodies becomes very important, and I'm very grateful to the software developers who introduced 8 gender-sensitive indicators, gender-sensitive items for disaggregation of data. This was done for the local self-government authorities, local government authorities, and this will be important for your advocacy of changes. This is important for international programs offered to Ukraine. Now, in a situation of war waged against Ukraine, we receive a lot of international assistance, and international aid agencies require this gender disaggregated information. They simply cannot provide assistance without them. We had analyzed 80 sets of gender disaggregated data, and out of them we selected 52 sets of data, and out of them 15 more sets of data were recommended for gender disaggregation, for compulsory gender disaggregation. This will add to those 8 gender disaggregated data which we have in current legislation. 10 sets of data out of that 52, they already have gender disaggregation in them, while 27 data sets do not suggest any disaggregation, gender-related disaggregation. Actually, Ukraine has reached has reached many achievements in gender policy and gender sensitive data, and now we have rethink our approach to big data, and especially in the aspect of gender-sensitive disaggregation, and that is, include gender-sensitive component as much as possible to big data. It is very important for future policy of recovery for Ukraine, because we assume that recovery policy will need to satisfy a big demand on social equity. Then we have understood that a ministry cannot just resolve this issue within one night, because here much depends on the data managers, and only joint work of 3 major state bodies, central executive bodies, which deal with the data, would allow us to get positive results. Then collecting data to ensure gender equality requires compliance with 226 different requirements or indicators. As far as I know, currently work groups are thinking about indicators for recovery, etc. And again, they need this data input from us. We have found that there is insufficient representation of NGO, of different gender groups from NGOs in preparing data sets for databases. And I believe that you may try to use this databases more broadly, and in case you reveal that they are gender prejudice, so to say, please inform us. Thank you, Natalia, for your research. It seems to me that research lasted for 7 months. And what is the most valuable for me in your research is these are those data sets in which gender disaggregation is included by now. And now we have results of your research, of your survey, of your research, and then you would like to then we can work on the implementation. Please give us 1 minute before we prepare for preparation of the scenery, and then we will continue our event and start open discussion. So, dear audience, I would like to announce the next block of our discussion. This is open discussion. Why it is important to integrate gender component into open data and how to do this properly. Here we will discuss the obstacles which we are facing, the issues or challenges. And I'm happy to invite Ms. Natalia Chermashentseva, Yanina Lubeva, Mr. Vitaly Lavrov, Deputy Minister of the Youth and Sports, then Mr. Sergei Belakov, who is an advisor in database analysis and optimization of business processes from Ministry of Social Information, and Ms. Natalia Babinska-Virna, expert in open data. I believe this is a good membership of this panel, very strong membership of this panel, because we have representatives from government authorities and from civil society. My first question goes to Mr. Vitaly Lavrov, Ministry of Youth and Sports is quite successful because it was your ministry which implemented all our recommendations, and that became quite unexpected to us. So my first question is why you understood the importance of gender disaggregated big data. At the beginning of my career in the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and when I have heard about this research, we immediately started to launch collection of big data and the registration of them from scratch in our ministry. Those people who were involved in the process, they had their proper understanding, proper vision of what had to be collected and how it had to be collected. At the same time, we were happy with those lectures about open data, which provided us with new information and new trends in this area. Now we had launched a test of all our data and information systems, checking them against requirements to gender-sensitive indicators. And we found it very useful for our databases, especially targeting anti-corruption. And currently, we offer the register of sports facilities, register of sports schools for youth, and availability of sports activities. These are 3 registers where it was quite easy to introduce gender-sensitive indicators. Moreover, these are aspects which attract much attention in society. And we try to make good use of this increased attention, and we see it as a good opportunity to overcome any possible gender inequality. When we had analyzed the current situation or the previous situation in gender-sensitive indicators, then we analyzed them, provided recommendations at the level of ministry, and implemented immediately what were easy successes, which seemed easy successes to us, easy wins. Some indicators were more difficult to be introduced. So now my piece of advice to those who are responsible is to take first those indicators upon which you have your own impact and can introduce changes by your orders or your decisions. Is my understanding correct that the cost of those changes is negligible?
There are practically none. This is being done regularly according to the job descriptions of the people in question. If they are overloaded and should be relieved, we can expect a delay, but there is some time to be dedicated to implementation of recommendations. This is not cost-intensive or resource-demanding for that matter. There are many myths on that matter, and gender disaggregation requires rewriting of the systems, a lot of funds, and you debunk such myths. And I understand that you have to run. Yes, I am expected another meeting, unfortunately, but for the information systems, and we have technical requirements, and for budgetary funding, not donor provided, we have not capital expense, but sustainment expense to finalize this component. I don't think it takes up any considerable funds. Thank you, Vitaly. And we understand that you have to run. And thank you for joining us today. Now, my last question. To continue with the discussion of our agenda, Natalia, what are the challenges that you encountered in that lengthy discussion? There are certain pitfalls. Among the pitfalls, I have that this is a hypothesis for the. This is the partial openness of certain data, and we have to analyze the resolutions for the set of data. And Mr. Avrova mentioned that we had to make changes to the system. There are more efforts to be taken to change the data, I would say. And the ones regulated by the interior decrease or this is declarations, and we have to understand what should be done, how it can be done. It's not that difficult after all. And if we see it that way, the locomoting goes. If there is no understanding, there is no will, and there is no way. And this locomotive, this train wouldn't go. However hard we try to push and pull, so we have to switch from the personal discussion. 835 is a way to institutionalize that and to stop it being some general understanding or misunderstanding, but this is just for the gender policy requirements and open data for that matter. Thank you, Natalia. And we can say in our survey, and we did so, that the legislative level is quite productive and the commitments are there. Ukraine has accepted that at the highest level. Legally speaking, we have the ground to make some changes, and Mr. Lavrov was actually speaking to the point that it's not about human resources, it's about will again. The project is initiated by Ministry of Digital Transformation, and I would like to ask Yanina Lubeva about the plans for the ministry to, or what kind of plans do they have to support this? Thank you very much for the question. 7 month we had a busy period to produce the roadmap, but it is available now more than 20 different agencies. Central executive bodies encompassed, and United Open Data is across the board and across the board phenomenon. So we have to grasp as much as we can. There are some holders of information present in this audience, and they are open for cooperation. Accordingly, we will start our work with the issues of education, healthcare. Thanks to the people from the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Healthcare for integration of gender disaggregated data for their open data, and we also appreciate the efforts of High Council of Justice. They cannot make themselves available for this meeting, but they will attend our subsequent conferences. I'm sure Natalia was right saying that as a result of our communication with the holders, some holders have already integrated gender components, and we do not want to have any imperative for the holders. It is a matter of dialogue, in our opinion. When the draft survey was being finalized, we submitted it for approval for different stakeholders whose information we fed into the survey. Some of them would just use a pro forma answer, impediments, and changes to the legislation. It is impossible because it cannot be done. But some of them accepted this as a signal for action. Our colleagues from the Ministry of Justice partially agreed to integrate a gender component for their data sets, the notary services and in the country, but we shall overcome someday, I'm sure. So we will try to do as much as we can. Our survey is our vector, and we have to do as much as we can for the gender component to be integrated into as many sets of data information systems, registers, so forth. Thank you, Janina. I think you are putting together your to-do list, things to-do list, and gendering component to the open data, and this is not the end of this event. Yes, sure. I'm working hard. So if you want to respond to some statements, you have the mic and you can join the discussion. But let me put this question to you also for the state agency, Sergei, Ministry for Social Policy. Well, the name, the very name, speaks for itself, but nevertheless, your body is presents the key component, national gender mechanism, and the Ministry of Social Policy will. I'm interested how they are going to use gender disaggregated data for the internal policies of the ministry. The ministry has a name and has to live up to it. Yes, thank you very much. Thanks for the questions. It's extremely important because we play indeed a critical role in this whole affair. I am very much in favor of fairness and justice. That was what Natalia mentioned. This is about helping people in dire straits, difficult circumstances, with their special needs. The sensitive groups and the Ministry of Social Policy is now having a great digital revolution. The social protection database. In the future, we had 40 different registers, 15 systems living their own lives. But now we would like to integrate that into one system, and based on the single social register, we'll get information on all the people who would at least once encounter social sphere, social assistance, social services. And this is a great progress because should not exchange data. It will be a one-stop shop that will be all measurable and identifiable as to what kind of populace we are talking about. It should be anthropocentric. It should be all around human being. And gender component is super important. And also we form and develop for the ministries the analytical subsystem, and we introduced this full-fledged corporate NPI, not just to get information from different sources, but for the analytical panels of the dashboard, and the dashboards should be used and provide for our territorial communities, because it is important for the communities to appreciate what kind of people live in the communities, what their sensitive points are, the special needs, their gender component. This is super important, as I said. And in addition to internal, we need external dashboards and the portal for open data. And it is very important for the sets that you have analyzed, your colleagues, to we need full-fledged gender analysis, and we have to provide this information in machine-readable format through the portal for the public to have access, and our territorial communities and other central agencies and the media community, business community, to have it available free of charge. And also we anyway are launching dashboards at the site of the ministry to have our own analytical products to offer, and for all the stakeholders to be able to familiarize themselves with that easier to-do list. This is already in our action plan. Great. Because it's very great when you have dashboards and they available and processable data for the analysts. It's important to have the raw data so that they can have their own analysis, identify trends, disproportion, and so forth. Let me comment on this also. For the toolkit, we would like to develop public API because this is API. And we have another guest, Nadia. We have the same name, Nadia. Well, you are a great example of a champion of open data, because with the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the community is a bit turbulent in its status, like the open data realm, but you have your unique expertise, open data and gender component, most importantly. Can you provide any advices to gender disaggregated data, providing for advocacy opportunities and decision making? I recently spotted your presentation gender component, it would be great for you to share the insight, because draft is a plan, and it's interesting to have the gender component again. Thank you for inviting me. Let me reflect on Natalia's words about this bubble of open, that the gender component, the third bubble, is recovery or renovation and reconstruction. And then they invite you to a gender-related event. They say everyone is for gender equity, gender component. And we, in text, we trust, and we read through the different documents. Gender is hardly ever present. So it's only now that I have been diving deeply into that, because I am involved in the community doing with open data and gender-related issues and recovery issues. So we all live in different worlds. There is this one intersection, and what we see here, well, as far as I'm concerned anyway, gender equity, gender-oriented approaches, gender-sensitive data. Usually it's about public data, governmental data, but we have urban development, infrastructural facilities, education, and science, social protection services. The National Recovery Council have forgotten there is nothing about the gender disaggregated data there. So for the future, the developed documents, the plans for recovery, the Ukrainian plan being developed by the Ministry of Economy, and other strategic policy papers for recovery will contain all the things that we have discussed during this event and all the consequences. All the results will be integrated, because we're doing this for people which are not gender neutral, age neutral, or anything. They are not artificial, they are live human beings. Mstislav made a joke about the weather. The weather, though, it's not about snow, it's about men and women getting to their destination. And we have to clean the roads for the cars, and who drives the cars? Mostly men. And what do the women do when they take their children to kindergartens or outpatient clinics? They walk. We use public transportation. And this is cleaning the streets and the social infrastructure. This is not our priority. Of course, we have to clean the roads for the public transportation means, but this is not so obvious. We are having this snowstorm, and what are the goals, the objectives? It's not just about Ministry of Social Policy collectivity. This is your communication with business. We need mobile operators, and
про те, як добираються люди до закладів соціального
social infrastructure, not to get hurt till you reach your destination. This is about data, this is about collecting the data, this is about cooperation with the non-governmental sector, the public sector. Easy way, despite all the resistance, they're publishing data on the public transportation. All the data is to accumulate it for decision-making and information purposes.
That is why my biggest suggestions to the Ministry of Digital Transformation are, first of all, they should check their services, whether the collected data, they are complete, and moreover, whether they are gender disaggregated. Then Ministry of Digitalization, they coordinate and provides approvals for different information systems. And that's why they should add to the feasibility studies and to the terms of reference, this compulsory gender disaggregation. And the next step, when we discuss resolution number 835 and amendments to it, we should include the issue of gender disaggregation and about the compulsory or binding nature of this resolution. Then, when we are designing any data set, please involve those who are producers of this data and ask them how would be the best way of gender disaggregation of that data. Then we try to understand the face of our business, whether in terms of gender sensitivity. Sometimes it is not always possible to understand the gender of business persons. Thank you that we have paternalistic component of names, and due to that, sometimes we can understand the gender of a business person. But we are now in the 21st century, and reliance on the name component and manual understanding of gender splits is an obsolete approach. That's why I encourage Vitaly to think about that. That is, raising the issue of gender-sensitive indicators is quite important. It becomes a priority. Gender disaggregated data are required for social provision, for provision of state services. It is even important for the land cadastre. Limited access to many registers hampers women from prevents any access of women to this data. For example, limited access to land cadastre, it negatively influences women in rural areas. Thank you, Natalia. I would like to specify whether we have any questions here in the room. Can you hear me? Good afternoon. I'm Maria Dmitrievna. I'm a coach in women rights. I will speak quickly, sorry, to interpreters. Currently, we are producing our reports, Women, Peace, Security. And thinking about that report, I tried to find data resource for these reports at the level of communities. I have two comments. This is about potential, human potential. At the local level, social services are overloaded. We do not have people who can collect data at the local level. The law allows us all to collect data, but does not make it compulsory gender split data collection. Eventually, in our plan, we have our target lists of target groups, but at the local level, this is simply not implemented. And you even find out that many local data collectors, they produce data that in which you see big discrepancy. We have a situation when year by year, many of these local agencies, they submit reports about data collection with old dates. Then the next aspect is monitoring and evaluation of the activities of local authorities, central authorities in the area of gender-sensitive data introduction. Since we do not have such information, and we cannot monitor what they are doing, because we do not have people appointed specifically for this type of activity. In result of that, our activity on recovery of the country may result in something very different from our intentions. That is, we have to introduce a legally binding function to collect this gender disaggregated data or gender sensitive indicators. Thank you, Maria, for your reflection. I fully agree with you. I cannot add and actually to what you mentioned and to what you specified quite clearly. Thank you, Maria. I will actually continue your considerations. I represent the local government deputies, Kyiv, for equal opportunities. From the name of my CSO, you can understand that we stand for the equality of representation in local authorities. Now we work in the Kyiv City Council together with the Executive City Council. And of course, there is an obligation to collect gender-sensitive data or gender disaggregated data, but there is no binding obligation. We can easily gain necessary results in the area of education, for example, collecting data in the area of education. And when you are thinking about introducing changes to resolution number 835, then think about educational data. Not try to do everything in one moment or in one move. Try to collect the data in those areas where they could be done this could be done easily. For example, collect data about disability, about gender. A good example, we cannot offer efficient social services, public services, without understanding how does Kyiv local community look like as a whole, who are disabled, what is gender split, what are the age groups, etc. So Thank you. And having introduced that, we'll be able to implement that properly. Thank you, Ksenia. You inspired us. This is fascinating when the event attracts such an active participation. I'm Natalia. I would continue from what you said about poor information about the membership of local community. Back in 2018, we made a list of the program documents for local communities, and based on that model set of strategic documents, each community may develop its own policy about databases and information that should be contained in them. But for Kyiv, this is a bit more complicated. All those registers currently are not disclosed, and you can get access to them. And actually, this was the reason why we had made research based on the open data. Approximately, we have an idea how does Kyiv local community looks like. Do you recollect when the latest open register was produced? Yes. Now in Kyiv we have more than 400,000 IDPs, but actually the number is bigger. And this makes your presentation about gender approach and about shift of gender approach to the local level becomes very up to date. And this again demonstrates that we do not have any other way to get an actual picture of the community with which we deal, then to collect this gender-sensitive data. Now, thank you for your questions and answers, and we will speed up a bit. And now I'm pleased to give the floor to Natalia. I work with the communities. I have a good idea. I have a good understanding, actually, about the level of implementation of our documents. On the other hand, unless we have a good list of data, a good understanding of services that we are going to provide, we won't be able to ensure gender equality. We have 226 gender sensitive indicators, and only 100 out of them should be collected by the State Statistics Service, while more than 100 should be collected at the local level. It seems to me this is actually a clear message to the Ministry of Digitalization and to the Ministry of Social Provision to join the efforts and try to bring together what is already available, not trying to introduce new indicators, but decide how to enforce implementation of those indicators which already exist. It seems to me that as of today, we have a good political will for this step to be done. Thank you, Natalia. I'm pleased to give the floor to Janina to sum up, to wrap up. I would like to say that those shortcomings which we have in our law on the statistics, they are addressed in the law about open data. Actually, this allows to publish data based on the law on access to information. Currently, TAPAS has been implementing Open Data Academy, which is actually a training course for the region. How it looks like, we visited Chernivtsi, we visited Lviv, and in Lviv, we managed to cover the whole region for in that training. So and we can add the gender-sensitive components to that training about open data. In the resolution 835, there is a list of compulsory indicators that should be published, and we had prepared requirements as to publication of those data. At this stage, we are not going to introduce gender-sensitive components into that list of requirements, but we can come together and introduce gender disaggregated data into each set of data, which should be obligatory provided as a piece of public information. Thank you very much for this vivid discussion. Although we will finish now our stream on Facebook and other social networks, but we will continue our networking here in the room. Thank you for staying with us online. Thank you for contributing to the discussion. From what we have heard, we now see the specific commitments, individual to-do lists, and we now clearly understand what we will do on our European path further. Thank you.